Teachers who regularly get invited to high school reunions. What are the most amazing transformations, common patterns, epic stories, saddest declines, etc. you've seen through the years? Story 1. In high school, I was pretty good friend with a guy that was a bit overweight, about 64, really smart, and a bit nerdy. Lost track of him after high school, but saw him at our 10-year reunion. He was the talk of the reunion. Still tall, lost all the weight, and was in great shape, had long hair like Fabio, and was a doctor. He showed up with a beautiful wife. He gave us his contact info and invited us to Atlanta to stay with him in his huge house. After the reunion, I tried to get in touch. Contact info didn't work, and through some sleuthing I found out he was neither married nor a doctor. He was still in good shape. Can't fake that, but faked everything else. Story 2. Going to post my mom's story because she doesn't have an account. She was a home economics teacher, and specifically, she had one class called Relationship Psychology, where every day, to start the class, she would read through that cheesy Dear Abby newspaper advice column to talk with the class on how they would respond to the problem. One day ahead of class, she noticed that a letter published talked about a kid who sounded a lot like a student in her class and was located in our hometown. They always end the letter with a name and city, and my mom was always very involved with her students and their personal lives. The letter talked about a kid who was terrified of going to college and how he got rejected from all the schools he wanted to go to, had no self-confidence, abusive father, money problems, that he would lose all his close friends, couldn't stand the idea of leaving his disabled mother, and that he felt enormous pressure as a first-gen college student and had ultimately decided not to go to college at all. She read it to the class, and they discussed, and she could tell the boy in her class was very uncomfortable. After class, she asked him about it, and it was in fact a letter written by him. He never thought it would get published and responded to by the Dear Abby column, and was super embarrassed. He, like most students, never even knew what the Dear Abby column was until they took her class. Afterwards, she talked through everything with him and talked with his mother and evaluated his options on how best to approach college. She taught him finances, loans, scholarship options, his mom's condition, and everything, and got him to a place where he felt better about his future. 4 years later, the kid ended up being the speaker at his college graduation of over 7,000 kids, met his wife at college, all of his groomsmen, and got a killer job through his career fair on campus before graduating. She flew out and attended as he invited her, was always blown away by that. Story 3. A previous student of mine grew up in a horrible home situation. This individual was really smart, and I did my best to help them apply, receive many scholarships and grants, and eventually went to an Ivy League school to get away from their abusive home life. They made it big, and I mean big-time millionaire. Made their family jealous, but in the end their hard work paid off. It was great to see, and I was so proud of what they become. The best thing was seeing them break the chain. The family had problems going back numerous generations, and to see this generation change was all worth it. 2. Wow, you guys are all so nice. Honestly, I wasn't trying to be a hero or anything, just felt like I was put in a place where I could really help someone, and the outcome was phenomenal for this individual. Just so you all know, this person recently applied for a part-time teaching job at a public inner-city school in order to mentor others from similar backgrounds. I guess karma finds a way, right? Cheers. Story 4. Not a teacher, but I went to my 10-year reunion. Back in high school, we had a kid who has Asperger's and was a little weird. He was, however, amazing at the yo-yo, having picked one up during middle school when we had that yo-yo trick assembly. After everyone else had stopped walking the dog in 8th grade, this guy was doing more and more elaborate tricks every day during lunch. He was bullied and teased, but he continued doing what he loved. So, at our 10-year reunion, people from every strata of high school popularity was there, including this guy. He was his same old self, but more confident. I asked him if he still yo-yos, and he busted out his custom-made titanium yo-yo that he said he made on a CNC lathe. He then started to do some tricks, and a large crowd gathered around. It was quite the show. He had gotten very good. When he finished, people clapped and cheered, and even the jockiest dude from back in the day, Fist, bumped him and told him how he was. The most amazing transformation was everyone else. Nobody teased him for being who he was anymore. They now admired him for being so passionate about something. Story 5. Used to have this one kid in my art class in senior high who treated it like one of those easy-to-pass classes. He was a big guy, much bigger than the other students, and had used his size and strength to bully other kids. The smaller ones, he was a little underneath it all. He would draw guns and crosses in his art book with pseudo-gangster sayings like lie by the gun, die by the gun, and fuck the police. You get the idea. Come reunion time, which was some 5 years later, he's found a girl who really reined him in, and kind of like a hunter taming a wolf, really turned him into a good man. They had a baby boy, and he's a responsible father and does yoga on the rocks by the beach. Complete 180. I do think he was a good guy underneath it all. He just needed direction from someone who could break down his walls. Edit spelling. Story 6. Not a teacher, but I went to my 20th about 5 years ago. The woman organizing the event was in my class since 3rd grade and was always bright, intelligent, charming, and pretty. She was very active in high school and by all accounts had a very bright future. Speaking to her at the reunion, it seemed that it happened for her. We talked about her self-help life coaching company and how they are growing and doing great. I asked her to send me more information when I got home, which is on the other side of the country. I got an email from her introducing me to her West Coast partner, whose email was from the URL exploseangels.com, which I thought sounded very contrary to what I was expecting. A quick look at their website had me immediately worried, and a short Google later I saw that they are an offshoot of the NXIVM cult that has been all over the news. The woman I was talking to, that I knew since age 8, was Lauren Salzman, who just this week pleaded guilty to holding 2 slaves locked in a room for 2 years. She was trying to recruit me and basically everyone at the reunion in NXIVM. I noped right out of that email conversation and have been watching everything unfold for the last 5 years. They're all looking at some serious jail time now. Edit holy smokes, thanks for the plunder and the karma. My biggest comment yet, yay cake. Story 7a. Former student of mine grew up in an ultra-conservative Christian home. He and his siblings were never allowed to socialize with other students during lunch and recess. Whenever they had free time at school, they had to read their Bibles. In science class, they were forbidden to learn about evolution. Every essay, short story, personal narrative, and poem he wrote for me involved some kind of Christian theme. When he graduated, he immediately enrolled in a big seminary in our area, and that was the last I heard of him until his class invited me to their 10-year reunion. This same kid showed up with sleeve tattoos, piercings everywhere, slamming beer after beer after beer, and smoking like a locomotive. When I asked what he was doing now, he responded he currently was a bouncer at a strip club. Story 8. One kid grew up to be that guy, treading the line between jolly neckbeard and somewhat scary incel. I saw him after a full 12 years had passed. The worst part is he was one of the most popular and socially adjusted kids in school. Always invited to parties, girls always trying to spend time with him, had always get away with absurd things in school because even the teachers liked him. He was just really funny and naturally charismatic, not to mention fit and handsome. However, he was strictly religious, so he never had with any girls. A few years after graduation, he became an atheist or just agnostic, but by this time he had a dead-end job at a supermarket, had gained weight, and was obsessed with Dragon Ball Z because he related to unleashing his true power. So he spent like 5 years desperately messaging girls from HS, trying to say, hey, I can have now. But he was just not that attractive anymore, and his social skills had deteriorated tremendously. He was rejected by every single girl that was pining over him just a few years ago in high school. He ended up publicly coming out as a proud incel 2 years before the reunion. In a post where he declared war on women and socially adjusted men, he often posted about being a virgin and how Christianity basically made him an incel because he missed out every chance for he ever had. So at the reunion, he came wearing a white t-shirt with the words, "Fuck you." He'd walk up to now married women that he had previously solicited and just smirked silently, waiting for them to read the shirt. He was thrown out by the venue after about 40 minutes since so many people complained of his creepy behavior. Story 9. Not the teacher, and not the full school reunion either. I'm not sure if those even still happen since Facebook is a thing, but a group I hung out with of nerds like me in high school wanted to get back together and play Deathmatch Quake, LAN party style like we did as kids. I'm effectively a loser with no social life, and I'm scared of people, but this I thought I could handle, so I went. They asked me to pick up Joe on the way to the party, and I do. Joe was out of shape when we were kids, like a pudgy kid. That was all that was really wrong with him. He was smart, well-kept, and rich as, like, dad owned a restaurant franchise rich. Not like one of the locations, like the entire company. We always had the parties at his house. We didn't bring our own computers because he just had basically a lab we all played at, so I was a bit curious why we weren't repeating something like that. Not that I cared. I have my own lab, not rich, though. So we could have all had a computer, but we went to another dude's house. And who cares? Everyone brings a laptop now anyhow. Anyways, pick up Joe from a really sketchy-looking house. Really surprised. Dude comes out of the place really, really big and really, really dirty looking. Clothes were dirty and tattered. Looked like he had dirt in his greasy hair. And had to be 300 or 350 pounds. He was big. Hardly fit in my car. Almost immediately he tells me his dad died. That he ran the company into the ground, gambled away most of the money, invested it in stupid things, etc. And basically he tells me inside of the car ride how he blew something ridiculous like 100 million bucks. Whole thing made me sick and sad. Story 10. Do teachers get to go to high school reunions? That seems like a recipe for finding out if the English teacher really did have a dolphin stamp. Edit. Apparently teachers are invited. Neat. Story 11, I have a few. One guy was this star pupil, smart, handsome, athletic, everything. Dating the head cheerleader, some Hallmark movie. They leave, go off to college, and nobody thinks ITLL go wrong. Come 10 years later, she divorced him, was given the house his late grandfather built in the divorce, and lived there with her new lover while he was in a hotel. 10-year reunion happens. He's deathly skinny and depressed. Sees the school, remembers the memories he had, goes home after reunion and kills himself, leaving behind 2 little girls. His ex got chased out of the community last year. Death threats against her and her lover. She's trying to get in contact with people now because the lover took her money and fled back to the Philippines, and she's homeless now. Story 12, my husband graduated from fancy prep school. Literally over 90 of his class are lawyers and doctors now. To his parents' disdain, my husband became a professional poker player. Whenever he goes to reunions, there's a circle of these super successful doctors and lawyers around him because they'd rather listen to his stories. Edit. This blew up overnight. To answer some of the questions, how can you be a professional at something that's based on luck and chance? There's a lot more than meets the eye. Hunches and gut feelings are a very small part of poker. It's a very mathematical, probabilities-driven game. If you're curious, consider looking up game theory branch of mathematics, and specifically as it pertains to poker, if you're very curious and technically minded, pick up a copy of Mathematics of Poker by Bill Chun and Jared Ankerman. How much does he make? A whole lot more than me. And I have a decent job, not a doctor or a lawyer, though. It's a mixed bag of feelings to come home from a frustrating day to see that he's won my monthly salary. What's the biggest he's won lost at once? He's won a tournament for just under $1 million. And I believe he had about 25 to 30 of himself at the time. He's had a few more low-mid six-figure scores with various amounts of himself. When I talk about having percent of himself, as someone brushed upon it, a lot of the players swap or sell their action. The way it works is that you cover a part of someone's tournament buy-in with a little markup for the work they're putting in plus their edge, and in return, if they win some money, they then pay you back that percentage of their prize. This allows people to play bigger tournaments than they would if they had to pay it all themselves. As far as how much he's lost at once, there isn't a lot of losing an obscene amount at once in tournament poker. I think at some point he's entered a 10,000 tourney without selling any action. It's more about how many tournaments in a row you play without winning or cashing any. He's been fortunate not to have any super crazy downswings. Knocks on. It's not a real useful job. I don't entirely disagree, and neither does my husband. It's a common struggle among the players. Some try to add value to the world by accumulating as much as they can through poker and then donating a lot to charity. Others consider it a step in their life that then opens up opportunity to focus on other, non-zero-sum ventures. But 2 more points to consider. 1, how many regular jobs are actually making the world a better place? And how many are neutral to harmful? Even lawyers can range from doing a ton of good in the world to bringing a lot of harm. 2, if you could sit in the comfort of your own home, no boss, no schedule, play a game you love and rake enough to make a living, and then some, would you say no to that because it's not a real value-making job? I do like to say that I would, but I'm not sure. I sympathize with his parents. I love his parents. They are amazing people. I should mention that in the 12 years that husband's been doing this, they've mostly come around and are proud of him. I've personally taken the time to make sure his mom knows enough about poker to understand that part of his life. Every few months, his dad still reminds him that he can take his LSATs anytime, though. Story 13, I'm a middle school teacher of over 10 years, so some of my students are high school and college graduates at this point. I'm happy to say that a good number of them have reached out to me to share life stories and updates. The one student that comes to mind was confidentially suicidal from a broken home with identity issues. She came to me for help, and we found spoken word poetry as an outlet for her emotions, anxiety, and discovery of self-worth. She's currently returning to school to finish her associate's degree, and she was the first in her family to graduate HS. I get updates from her on my birthday each year. She still writes and performs spoken word poetry in her spare time. Edit, wow, I did not expect to get this kind of overwhelming response. Yes, I have a million other stories, many of which don't have as happy of an ending. Yes, this is why I love being a teacher, and yes, I love hearing from my students years later, though very few actually reach out. Story 14, not a teacher. But there was a guy who was the stereotypical jock in high school, very unemotional, stoic, etc. Then he went into the military and got PTSD. Now he is a hippie and psychotherapist. Story 15 again. I am not a teacher, but a 35-year-old. I went to high school in Venezuela. I left the country when I was 17 and never saw any of them until what you might call a virtual reunion on Facebook a few years back. The reason I got to even know they had a group, the guy everyone knew bullied me, was shot and killed by his best friend at the time. Apparently, he kept being after graduating, and thus that was the end result. Besides that, most of my classmates moved from the country due to the crisis. Those who stayed are having a bad time, like everyone else in the country. It is weird seeing them in Facebook in random countries and doing things which I would never expect from them as a teen. One is a cook in Sweden, other is an MMA fighter in California. One is an accountant in Australia. Plenty have middle-class lives in other South American countries. Simply interesting edit. Thank you for the gold, kind stranger. Story 16, not really a surprise, but the guy who used to bully me all the time is basically homeless. He refuses to go back to his parents, absolutely nothing wrong with them. He just never got out of the rebel teen phase and spends his nights either couch surfing at a mate's or sleeping on the streets if no one can take him in. Any job he gets he stays at until he has enough money for whatever he wants at the time, and then quits, skates all the time, and wants to go pro, but spends all his time smoking weed and drinking, then crying about how his life doesn't go anywhere. People at the reunion were astounded that he had just not changed one bit. He still used the slang he used back then, and even tried to get his old mates to tease me like they used to, but they didn't because they're all adults now with jobs, and some even have kids. He was kicked out of the venue because he tried to pick a fight with the guy who laughed at him for how he was dressed, 30-year-old man dressed. As a teenager Reddit, I think it's important to note that this guy and I used to be close friends before he started bullying me. I know his parents weren't horrible because I saw his home life firsthand and had lash out at them for simple things and treat them both like. The worst I can say about them is that they were pushovers when it came to punishing him. Edit 2. I also posted one of this guy's Facebook rants in Rinse and Epiopla Facebook. This took place about a year or two ago. Story 17, not a teacher, but just wanted to give shout out to the girl that's going to win her high school reunion next year. In HS, she was super quiet and, well, she was a bigger girl. She was tall too, so it all compounded together. She'd try to shy away from any limelight, but that was hard when she was like 8 inches taller than the rest of us. Anyway, she's lost like 80 pounds in the last couple of years. Found a hairstyle that suits her, so well she would wear it long, and has just really hit her stride. I want to say something, but I'm trying to maintain my total status from HS, so I'm not going to kidding. I just don't want to be that person that comments on weight, even though I know she worked hard for it, and probably wants people to say something. Story 18, currently a student in this situation, had all the former graduates from the year prior come home. One kid who used to drive me to school started his own company out of his dorm and hit it big household name within a year. Guy ended up dropping out soon after. One of the nicest guys I know. Shout out to you, Nick. Story 19, I went to an all-girls boarding school. This one particular hostel supervisor had been working there since she was 22 and has been there for nearly 40 years, so she has definitely seen a lot. Our school's foundation day each year is attended by over 500 alumni. Some friends and I were chatting with her when this group of incredibly smart and intelligent women come up to her. After they greeted her, she told us that she never thought they would get anywhere in life. These girls were the most notorious of all the kids that she had to deal with. They chopped off a teacher's waist-length hair and stole teachers' cell phones only to bury them, put on the janitor's uniform to sneak out of school, got fake blood, and put up handprints outside the rooms of 9 and 10-year-olds. Decided to summon spirits in a hostel building right after a visiting academic died of a heart attack. The rest of the girls in the hostel building were so scared that the school decided to lock down the building for nearly 5 years. They also took turns to stand on top of one of the buildings with a white sheet and showed it to kids in the farthest building. That's how we got our infamous resident school ghost. They all are in their late 20s now, great jobs abroad, but looking at them, you would never think they could pull something off like that in their teens. Story 20, former student who was a decent kid who tried, just not the brightest, graduated, got a job at Whataburger, got fired because he kept showing up late. His manager was his mom. Story 21, also not a teacher, but have been out of HS all-girls school for 6 years. At our 5-year reunion, I caught up with a girl who was severely bullied during HS. She fell off a horse in grade 8 while riding competitive and legit snapped her spine and was in a very intense back brace for her entire high school career. And my God, the other girls were so nasty to her. She would get made fun of for her appearance. And there was an incident where someone filmed her in class without her knowledge and then edited the video to have all these innuendos around her back brace, and it was posted on Facebook. Our principal was also a horrible woman, and when the video got reported to the principal somehow blamed this girl instead of penalizing the bully. She ended up having to stay back a year because her disability was so bad and she couldn't complete her schoolwork and was unable to graduate. She was incredibly religious as well, and other girls used to make weird Christian jokes about her mom having to bathe her because she couldn't bathe herself due to her back brace. Anyway, she's now doing some fancy medical degree in the UK and is pain-free and out of the back brace. She looks amazing healthy, glowing, and rigorously kicks at the gym every day to physically rehabilitate her body. The best part of the story is that she has absolutely no ill will to the girls who bullied her. It upset her at the time, but she didn't let it scar her. She knew that her bullies were obviously insecure and dealing with some inner demons if they went out of their way to ruin her life. She felt bad for them more than anything. I run into her at the gym all the time, and it's so nice to see her so confident and thriving. Story 22, a frustrating thing as a teacher is not being able to remember all the kids you've taught. I've taught roughly 150 kids a year for 15 years, so it becomes hard to remember specific things about every student. I feel like a D-bag when a kid who really enjoyed my class comes up and asks me questions about life or the class issue was in, and I can't remember much about it. I've found that I usually remember high-achieving creative students or kids who were badly behaved, as I have a soft spot for these kids. Since I usually remember the badly behaved kids, I have noticed that most of them figured it out by the time they reach 30. Most have great jobs and are well-adjusted. Conversely, many of the high-achieving students end up dropping out of college and are working low-wage jobs. I don't believe that high school is much of an indicator of future success. As long as you graduate high school and attempt college, how you perform in high school will not be that important. Story 23, in my high school, they used some of the class reps as volunteers in order to organize this 10-year meeting. My, at that time, class master told me that a super good-looking woman, she was 29 back then, I was 17, and she was top 3 woman I've ever seen in my life, was one of the dirtiest students she ever had. She would not shower for days, and at some point she was out of school for a week or so because she got a really bad infection from her period and lack of showers. Also, one of the smartest guys from that generation, who went to veterinary school, was convicted for selling some sort of animal's drugs to people and use them on himself. He seemed super normal, but when he spoke you could tell that there were some clicks in his brains that were not connecting at all. Losing the idea in the middle of the sentence, couldn't keep the voice at the same tone for more than 10 seconds, going from whispering to shouting and stuff. Story 24, not a teacher, but a girl I used to be interested in since elementary school. We were really close friends. I'd even work for her dad when I was a kid, stuffing envelopes for him to send out to his clients. Just basic stuff that he offered us 10 cents per envelope to be a nice guy. In high school, we drifted a little bit apart, and she started dating another friend of mine who shortly after noped out of that relationship because she wanted him to make her pregnant. Fast forward a couple years after graduation, she did have children, who she then suffocated when they were 3 years old and 22 months old. Sentenced to over 40 years in jail, she was smart, pretty, and charming, and now she might never see the outside world again. Needless to say, she didn't make it to the 10-year reunion. Story 25, I sat beside this girl, Joni, in grade 8. She was so smart and really pretty, she would always finish the year with like 95 averages, even as high as 98 in some subjects. I was a hooligan, that's why I was seated next to her. She would help me with stuff, always let me copy her homework Pika tests. There's no way I would have passed without her. The teacher would always say you'll never get anywhere if you just copy Joni all the time. She works the drive, through it on now, has a herd of children with some skeezy-looking dude who's in and out of jail. Breaks my heart when I see her. So much potential to end up flipping burgers. I always wonder where it went wrong for her. Story 26, it never occurred to me that teachers could also go to a high school reunion. I've skipped my reunions because I still talk to the people I cared about from there, so I didn't see a point. However, there are definitely teachers I would love to catch up with now that I'm older, but then again, they might not teach there anymore, so it might not even be worth it. Would it be weird to reach out to them on Facebook or LinkedIn? Story 27, not a teacher, but we just had our reunion. There was this one dude who was just not even geeky, but just odd, always trying to fit in and never quite managing it. He had a couple popular friends, though, so most times he could use that as a way in. I remember at graduation, he was just approaching random groups of people trying to start conversations and was just super unsuccessful at it. And I was a huge geek myself, so if this dude appeared socially inept to me of all people, he was super socially inept because I was too inept myself to notice stuff like this unless it was bad. Anyways, he's on all the bus benches around me now because he's the MLA for an area close to me now. The first time I saw it, I was like, WTF, like there's no way this kid could have gotten people to vote for him. I guess even the most socially inept can grow up and thrive, but here I am still as socially inept as I was in high school, lol. Story 28, I knew this Sudanese guy named Bravo when I was a senior. He punched one of the school deans square in the jaw, got expelled, tried to steal 50 worth of weed, and got shot in the course of a week. He's definitely in prison now. Edit caught myself being racist. Story 29, not a teacher, but still a story of how my good friend Jay transformed into a better human. I met Jay in high school. He was 15, 16, I was 18, 19. Whilst he was a lot younger then, he behaved a lot older than he was, so it never bothered me. He was a mess of a human, though. By 15, he was kicked out of 3 schools, smoked weed all day, every day. I believe he had run-ins with the police, but I'm not 100 sure. This went on until after I left our hometown for university. He had this gift, though. The gift of the gab, for those who don't understand. He's a fantastic conversationalist. He was incredibly outgoing, handsome, think tall Danish blonde dude, and could connect with just about anyone. If we went to a party, I would send him in first for 10 minutes, then join and meet the people he met. I can't recall how much education he actually completed. I think he just finished his high school, but dropped out of college. Despite this, he managed to land a job as a business rep or something. Business makes little sense to me by literally walking into his interview, telling the interviewer his education didn't matter because he knew exactly how to sell. He got the job, and now he travels around the world for work selling his company's product. He still is a mess of a human to my own definition, but at least he seems to have found a purpose, and I am so proud of him. Story 30, not a teacher, but I'm still in contact with most of my high school class. One girl was deemed to be a famous actress someday because she was such a great actor. I think she's a nanny right now, or works in a restaurant. Never did get a role outside of college. She's the only one that somewhat failed after school. All the teachers doted on her and built her up to be something big, which really made her ego awful to be around. And now she doesn't really do anything. Being a nanny or waitress is a great job, and both can be very difficult. I posted this because she was a to people because she thought she already had it made, and then after college never got anywhere with it. With the somewhat fail part was bad wording on my part. Everyone else seemed to follow what they wanted to do with their life after school except for her. Story 31, I'm late to the party and will get buried. But here goes nothing. Not a teacher, well, technically I am. But this is a story for my reunion. But at my school reunion, everyone from my class was doing as well as or better than could be expected, except for one guy. Let's call him John. At school, John was a smart kid, well-mannered, pretty quiet, and taller than anyone else. We were actually pretty good friends at the time, but lost touch after a while. This was before social networks. I know he went to university to study computer science, and the last thing I heard about him was that he had gotten married and had 2 kids. Anyways, I was looking forward to seeing him and finding out what he was up to for the past 15 years, but he didn't show up. Later, the teacher told us that she tried to contact him, but no one knows where he is. He left one day to go to work and never came back. No bodies have been found. He hasn't contacted his wife or sister. He's simply vanished into thin air. I tried finding him online numerous times, but to no avail. I still try from time to time. I just hope he is safe and well. Story 32, not a teacher. ID probably fall into this category. In high school, I was thriving by the time I left. Known to be very morally responsible, had a bunch of potential. My friends adore my presence since I was so friendly and kind. Welp, I'm total drug addict now. 3 years later, because eventually people fall apart. All that hard work really meant nothing. Syeded apologies for not actively replying. I just got home from work. I did not expect this much support, and honestly, it really means a lot to me. Thank you. And a little backstory, I'm only 3 years in a drug addiction, but I've been given stimulants for ADHD pretty much all my life since I was 5. I'm 21 and diagnosed with severe ADHD and high-functioning ASD. I only started getting high after high school when my ex at the time started emotionally manipulating me nonstop. So by the time I left her, I had extreme PTSD due to being abused by her. I fell into a deep depression and cut contact off with everyone because I wouldn't let anyone get close to me again. I then stumbled into hydrocodone from wisdom teeth surgery and learned that I'm always in pain. It only escalated from there. I realized there was a bunch of lying horseshit and pretty much dived into polydrug use and heavy binging. Learned that I could get high from stimulants too. Just had to dose stupid high amounts that would be way too much for others since I had 15 years of stimulants under my belt. I've only recently taken hold of my addictions and have been actively working towards being able to control myself. I'm no longer a slave to these substances, but still have cravings out the wazoo. I have a daughter on the way, though, and she definitely was a big push for me to get a hold of myself. It's been difficult, but I'm making progress and cutting back significantly. Thank you guys for the support. I don't feel like things are quite as hopeless as they seem. Story 33, not a teacher, but was at school with one girl, very geeky, very exuberant. She was in all the school drama productions, and she would tell everyone that she was going to be a famous actress someday. We were like, yeah, whatever, no one from little old New Zealand ever cracks that level of fame these days. She's been a female lead in a number of movies now, alongside people like Woody Harrelson, Ewan McGregor, Courtney B. Vance, Mark Rylance, to name a few. I actually got to be on stage with her in a school production. So she's my ticket into 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.